Good morning, everyone. Sorry for catching you out if you don't tune in until 9 o'clock, but there's a couple of things I wanted to show you before the 10 o'clock rollover of the new GPS position on the tracker. When you see something on the tracker that doesn't look right, like Simon, for instance, right now, you can see he's got pretty much a west, or pretty much a southerly wind. I was going to say a west southwesterly wind. A south southwesterly wind, but it's on the nose, and that's not good. He's gusting 35 knots or something, and be an ugly sea. And then you hit the tracker button to get the statistics. He's doing 7.7 knots. Now that's impossible, right? That tells you a story. And what's the story? Well, here it is here. That this was at 4 o'clock in the morning. Okay, so 4 o'clock position, 7.7 knots. That wind he'd be doing 3 knots or something, or 2 knots, bounding to windward or just, close on the beam. But if I come across to the windy tracker, this is the position that he's in now. And you can see it's a southerly. It's forecasting 26 knots, which means it'll be gusting 30, 35 maybe. You don't do 7.7 knots in that. But because on windy proper, you can actually go backwards with the weather. So if I bring the weather back, you can see clearly what was happening. This is at 2 o'clock in the morning. At 2 o'clock in the morning, Simon's now got a northwesterly, right? Strong winds, 30, 35 knot northwesterly, and he'd be romping along, right? Heading down. That's where the 7.7 knots came from. And then all of a sudden, at about, this is 4 o'clock in the morning, he's still romping along. And then at 5 o'clock in the morning, bingo, 32 knots. That would have come through with a big bang of probably 50 knots. That's what happens in the Southern Ocean. It's like 32 knots there, but if I move this around now, you'll see it's going over maybe 35 knots. That means it's gusting, up to 50 knots on a front, because on a front it's even more than the usual gusts. Okay, so the wind would have gone from the northwest, whack, straight around to the south. So northwest 30, 35, whang. From the south, it could have gusted 50, 55 for like 10, 15 minutes and then settle down to what it is, which is 30 knots, and then slowly decrease, back to 25 knots. That's typically Southern Ocean. It's exactly what happens, and you'll see it more and more, that when they're sailing through the Southern Ocean, it's all a case of, as the front is approaching, it's a northwesterly preceding the front, and it's overcast and it's raining and all this sort of stuff. And then all of a sudden, when you're sailing, you look over your shoulder, and even though it's like that, you'll see a thin line on the horizon, which is clear blue sky, and it's heading towards you. You say, it's coming. And you've got a short period of time to reef or get ready, and it just goes whack straight round to the southwest. And that's a constant process. Every time, the highs, the lows rather pass through it, it's exactly what it does. And it comes in with a bang, really hard, and then it usually backs off, slowly, and then you settle into what the weather you normally get. And basically in the Southern Ocean, a good day in the Southern Ocean is, in an average day, is 35 knots and 3 to 4 metre seas. That's your baseline. And then it gets lighter from that, and it gets heavier from that. But yeah, it changes completely. And a lot of the entrants is their first time in the Southern Ocean, and they'll get used to it if they've read the books and they've understood everything that's gone in the past, with other entrants and so on. They'll think, look out for it. And then remembering, of course, if I take this back, we go back into the thing. There's a whole series. You've got your systems, like your highs and your lows coming through, but in between that, day to day, you've got these squalls, which are under the clouds, and they're as big as a football field or as big as a city block, and there's always more wind under them, so you're really on your toes, and it's very hard in the Southern Ocean without wind instruments, because if you're sailing in a modern boat, and you've got your wind speed and direction and instruments for nighttime sailing, you can see exactly what's happening. But on these boats, they don't have that luxury. You're basically sailing by the seat of your pants. You can't see when you're down below. You can't see what the wind direction is at nighttime, and it's northwesterly and you're sailing, but you don't know when it's coming. You can't tell when it goes across, and when the boat screws around, it's dark. You look at your compass, see what the heading is, and it's very challenging, completely different than all the other boats, and that's part of the challenge of the GGR, and the little things that most people don't even think about, making it very challenging for GGR skippers. So, but anyway, it was interesting. That was the first thing when I turned the tracker on a few minutes ago. I thought, what the hell? You can't be doing that kind of speed, Oh, and there you go, bang. Now, straight away, the 7.7 knots has disappeared. The new position has come in. Okay, so Simon's now doing 5.9 knots, but you can see he's had to bear away because he's got the southerly there. He's still taking it on a little bit after the beam by the look of it, so he's got it on the starboard quarter. The sea would have been very crazy when this is happening. In fact, I'll get rid of it now and we'll have a look at the sea state. He'll have quite, the tweet will be interesting when Simon's tweet comes through. This is his first real Southern Ocean front. There's a good 5-6 metres there. That's forecast, so you get the occasional one 7 metres or more. So I'm sure it's going to be an interesting tweet when it comes in. He would have been busy, and that's the new reality. Welcome to the Southern Ocean, Simon. Okay, so we'll come back to the wind and have a look at what else is going on, because there's another huge surprise if you haven't seen the tracker yet. And I'm starting at the front end fleet. We're getting all the exciting stuff happening first. But we can't deny what's going on here. It's quite interesting. So I'll keep building it up. Okay, there's Tapio making great progress in the current weather, which is wind on the beam. Way ahead of Kirsten. Okay, now if you've seen the live that we did when Kirsten came in, Kirsten came in first. When Tapio was on her hammer, right next to her, coming down from the sort of northwest, when they're about 10 miles or so out, they were neck and neck. And then all of a sudden, Kirsten, better put the spinnaker up, because she was running under boomed out twins. Put the spinnaker up and she just pulled away from him. Okay, and got in. She was 5-6 miles in front of him by the time we got to the line. And then she turned and took off before Tapio arrived at the line. But now look at the situation here. And I'm completely perplexed as to what's going on. I have no idea. Tapio's doing 3.3 knots. He went out wide. When he left, he said, he's gonna motor out for about, I don't know how long he motored for, maybe half an hour or whatever. It's just to go wide and get away from the coast, because there was not much wind there. Because what can happen when you get this light breeze, it comes to the coast, and as it gets there, it dies off, because the main airflow can go up over Table Mountain and just the coast. So it is a good move to, I'll build this up a bit bigger and you can see their track. It is a bit better to stay a little bit away in this bit. I've got no idea what's going on here. Kirsten sailed across like this when her friends were everyone there. She was probably here for, after the crossing the line for maybe another hour or so, hour and a half, with her friends and stuff. She had some friends meet her and sail in the last few hours, family and so on. And then she took off, but boy, I don't know, it's just really strange. I can't go in any higher. I lose the weather, so I'll get back to that. But yeah, it's and why would you go to sleep when she's only 2 miles off the coast here? I don't know what's happening, so it'll be an interesting tweet there. But come what may, I can guarantee Tapio is not motoring down here. Right, he's sailing all the way, and now he's way in front. And what's the ramifications of that? Well, all of a sudden, straight away, if we look at the distance gained from Kirsten in the last sort of 5 hours or so, 4 hours or something. No, we were there at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's now 10. In 7 hours, he's 17 miles in front. So that's kind of a wow moment. And here's, if we look at while we're here, I'll talk about the weather just in the immediate 24 hours for these guys and see what's happening. You'll see by the hour, it's changing right now. So it was a southwesterly, it's swinging more around to a southerly, it's very light. There you've got a southerly, that's in 3 hours time. You've got a southerly right on the nose, Tapio will have to tack over, and then it's swinging to the lead of this southeasterly that's coming. It's already got an easterly component, so you'll see Tapio at some points heading out to the west, going backwards until he can tack across onto the other leg, and it very quickly. This is now 5:30 this afternoon, and it's already establishing as a southeasterly. That's a little bit better, and it's got a strong easterly component in it. So finally, Tapio will start to come down here. The wind's now increasing in strength. Okay, we've got the yellow tone there, and it's going to develop into a strong southeasterly and east-southeasterly airflow. East-southeasterly is not so bad. They'll be on port tack, and he'll be sort of coming across this way, heading down as quick as they can to get the westerlies somewhere below them. And where are the westerlies? If I scale back here to see where they're trying to get to, there's not a lot there at the moment, but it'll start to come through. So if I come through to the next day, there's easterlies. That's good. They'll be coming south. And then eventually that's the 10th, so that's tomorrow, late in the day tomorrow. Yeah, it's going to be they'll be heading straight down. One thing I didn't point out, but I should do it now while we're talking all this lead stuff, is the currents. The Gullis currents coming up. We'll see what happens. Okay, Simon. There you go. See, I should have checked this. That's another reason he did 7.7. So you can clearly see here that when he had the strong northwesterly, look what he's got here. Bang. So that's the strength of that current is at least, in fact, I'm going to go back to windy. It looks like it's about 3 knots through there. We'll do the same here. I go more layers. This is on the windy main site. I've got to scroll down here to get to the currents. Hang on. Here we go. Currents. I want to just see, because I can get a speed measurement off this. Now if I increase the size of it, I'll try and see what the speed is. It won't give me a speed. No, it won't. Oh, there we go. Okay, so the suggested speed in this part of the Gullis current is 2.7 knots, which means it could be running it up to 3.5 knots or more. And so that's kind of interesting. So if we go back to the tracker now and look at this, so he had up to 3 knots there. He's coming down, so that's part of the reason he did it. And now he's slowed up as well. So this is interesting because the wind's coming this way. There's a very mild current. The sea state should be okay. What you don't want to see, if you were here with the current coming down here at 3 knots and the wind is blowing like 35 knots against that current, the waves can get very dangerous because they just stand up vertical. They roll over. They're very dangerous because you've got wind against tide effectively. If the wind is blowing 30, 35, 40 knots this way with the current, it actually can flatten the sea out. They become like rollers because they're not trying to fight each other. So anyway, that's kind of fun to see. So we got distracted to see what everyone else is going to be up with. So I've got to now... where I'm getting moving around so much. So okay, so Pat's just bounced through here. So when Tapio and everyone is coming down here, they've got a current coming from the east, which is not going to do too much. It's not too strong. They may go over here when they're tacking. So you can keep an eye on that anyway. Follow the tracker and watch the currents and see what happens. Simon's got to get across this lot. The wind should be this way, so cutting at 90 degrees, that's okay. That's a help. And so on, and currents for the rest of the fleet up here, not a big problem. So we'll go back to the wind. A couple of other interesting statistics while we're dealing with the leaders here is I always like using, like Damien is doing a great job. Abelish is completely frustrated having lost all that ground. But they're sort of having a great race together here. Damien's currently doing 6.4 knots. Abelish is currently doing 6.3 knots. Similar boats, similar sailors. They've had Abelish has had more Southern Ocean experience, but Damien's had more racing experience, like Round the Boys performance racing. This is going to be fun to watch. So that's fun. Pat is. I'm on the wrong weather here. Get back to today's weather. Pat's doing really well, struggling along. We'll talk about him more. Obviously today coming in, follow the ETAs, and he'll tell us his whole story about the Aries. We did have a chat on the phone yesterday. He rang me yesterday, but I don't want to preempt anything. I'll let Pat explain it when he's doing it live, and he can tell you exactly what's going on. But the statistic I was after is just the distance from Simon. This is always interesting for me, and maybe for yourselves as well. So right now we've got Damien. Let's say a couple of hundred miles from Cape Town, and then if we come back to Simon. I've got to come down here. So there's 200 miles there. Before when Simon was there, so okay, he's now here. There's another 300 miles. It's cutting the corner a bit. Okay, direct line over the land to Simon, 300 miles. He's 500 miles behind Simon. Remember at Cape Finisterre, he was 550 miles behind Simon. So these two are having a great race, right? At the moment, Damien can't catch him. And Simon's off and running, and that's going to be an important element. Having this break in the beginning of the Southern Ocean is really cool. You hopefully get a system away from things. So once it's established, in the next week or so, once they're all in the Southern Ocean, we'll be able to talk about it more. But sometimes the leaders become winners because they're out the front and they pick up on weather. And I know Damien's got one thing in his mind, and that's Simon. so that's it. Okay, so back to where are we here? Okay, so Pat's so the current weather it's pretty easy for them. What's going to happen for the lead boats? Captain Goog's back here doing pretty well. All of this group here, we'll just scroll the weather through and watch what goes. So southerly there is swinging into the southeast, and it's a race for them to get in before. So this is 6:30 this afternoon tonight. So 6:30. I didn't get the distance here, so we can see roughly where they are. Was 200 miles. So Damien's 200 miles in. That's a day and a bit. So he would be in sometime tomorrow lunchtime or something, sometime tomorrow morning. And Abelish will be in early morning maybe. And Pat will be in, let's have a look at that as well. I need to know this just to, not to, so much as ETA as just to see how long he'll be out there for the weather. Oop. I need to blow it up. Sorry, I'm getting a bit, didn't get much sleep last night. That's my excuse. Jeepers, come on. Okay. So Pat is now approximately 69 miles, so 70 miles from the finish. He's doing, let's say, 5 knots. So I get bogged down now trying to think of everything quickly. So 50 miles is 10 hours, and another two. Oh, that's easy. 14 hours. So 14 hours from now, if he's doing 5 knots, and 14 hours, he's going to be late. So he's going to be in tonight sometime. So about 14 hours from now, 14, 15, 16 hours, we should see Pat. So it looks like a nighttime arrival, which is a bummer. It's always good to see him in the daytime. Okay, so he's going to take the full day of weather. So if we now get back and reactivate the weather, that's tonight 7:30. He's got another couple of hours on it. So yeah, Pat's looking good. He'll ride this all the way in with a good breeze, basically reaching all the way in. So there's no hold up there. He'll easily make his 5 knots because it's going to pick up a bit. So in about 14 hours, you should see Pat live here on Facebook. Okay, and then these guys, 200 miles. So that'll be by the next day, starting to pick up, but it's still pretty good. This is 1 o'clock in the morning. Tomorrow morning they've got it's still not forward of the beam. So by about 3 o'clock in the morning, they might be lucky because they might be just the other side of the big shift to the southeast forward of the beam. Yeah, and it's got another quiet spot there. Yeah, so they get a reasonably fast run in. Not so much headwinds as just stronger increasing winds until they get close. So we should see them tomorrow morning for sure. Tomorrow midday, but all looking good. And then, of course, they'll have. I should keep going on that. Boy, I am slow this morning because then what are they going to have to get out of there? So in the 10th, then we go into the. That's the end of the day, the 10th. So they're going to be in the 11th. They will have turned around by then. They're coming down. Okay, it's going to be an easterly. They'll be heading due south. So that's looking pretty good as well. For them, so it'll be a quick in, quick out, and see how they go. Captain Goog, he will have been in the not as bad as we're thinking. There's another little low pressure system forming up here. That's going to be interesting. He may get some of this as a slight headwind. So too far apart to do, and I'm taking too much time because I got distracted on things. So we'll now look at the back end here. Put them back to today's weather. I'll decrease it again so we can see the group here. Okay, so Urchin, he's currently doing 5.4 knots. This is the weather right now. Jeremy, 3.5 knots. He's hooked up in this light spot, dragging barnacles. Ian Herbert Jones, looks like he's got a little bit of light winds forward of the beam, 3.3 knots. Arnaud, boy, he's lucked out again. He's hardly moved in a week or more. He'll be absolutely worried about Hobart. And Guy Waits, three knots. It's unusual. He's got a bit of breeze there, so I would have thought he's going faster. So maybe the barnacles are slowing him down or whatever. Sue Haley's up there bearing down on everyone. And Elliot in average breeze doing 2.4 knots. What are they going to get as they go forward? I'll come forward a day. That's tomorrow. More of the same for Elliot, like real confusing stuff. Not going to be making fast progress. Nord, if he moves forward in this, he's again not a lot happening. Same with Ian Herbert Jones. Guy, same. The slow progress for the back end. Come forward another day to the 11th. Same again. Look at this. Elliot's going to be all over the place. No spinner because he blew his kites out. Nord might have a bit more breeze, but especially if he comes south, and I think he probably should be. Guy, hard to say. Messy. Nothing looking favourable for these guys. Not a problem, not a disaster or anything, but certainly not, not what you want to see. You want to see constant airflows, rather than all this stuff. This is very frustrating for them. So they're not going to be gaining on the fleet at all. Anyway, that's about it. So we'll see you later today with Pat and his story. And I hope you enjoyed the lives. We did. It was kind of fun to see Tapio and Kirsten, and I'm looking forward to seeing Kirsten's tweets soon, because it just one more look at this, see where she is. I didn't have a good discussion on it on the last 4 hours. Why would she be back there? I have no idea. Have no idea at all. She's only done since the start. She's done since the line, which is it's now 10 o'clock local. We were there. We waved goodbye about 2 o'clock in the morning. It's 8 hours. She's done 8 knots, 8 miles. She's averaged 1 knot for 8 hours. Doesn't make sense. So stay tuned, and we'll let you know. By comparison, there's 8 miles at another 18. Wow, that's a story, and I don't